G'day, it's Robbie again. Well, today I'm pushing on with the oil connector that I've made up for the Tata alternator vacuum pump. This is the oil line that goes down to the sump from the vacuum pump. And in the last video you would have seen where I didn't quite finish it off because I wasn't getting enough clearance. Well, what I've done is I've reduced this diameter of this section. That's brought in the side tube and given it enough clearance that will now clear the alternator body. So we're good to go. Now it's a matter of braze it up. I'm going to bronze braze it, even though it screws in. I'll braze it and then I'll put the drill up through the end, drill out the bottom of the tube, because this is screwed right into the back of the gallery. Now to do this, you can see what I've done. I've actually given it a little bit of clearance on the outside edge around where the pipe screws in. Now I've done that because even though we're going to use capillary action, this will help it capillate through the thread better, and also even if it doesn't completely do all the thread, it will form a ring, a sealing ring around the pipe, and it'll seal it, and of course it will never come out. Well, not unless you reheat it, and then of course, yeah, you can reheat it and remelt the job and you can work on it again. So that's, you know, a big advantage with bronze. Now with bronze, you keep your gaps as thin as possible. I mean, you want enough to get the bronze in, but you don't want it too big, because with bronze, the thicker the bronze is, the weaker it gets. Bronze gets its maximum strength with a thin weld, so you know, a thin filler. So you always go for minimum gap. Plus, you know, you just waste a lot of bronze too. And yeah, that's it. We're ready to go. I've cleaned it up with acetone, and I'll show you the heat gun we're going to use. To do this, we'll be using the Bullfinch LPG torch. It's a torch that's made in England, Great Britain. It's the UK. It's the only LPG torch I've seen which will successfully bronze braze, manganese bronze braze. You know, we're talking proper bronze here, not silver solder. You know, which yeah, is going to cost you a lot more in rods and stuff. This is equivalent to MAP gas. So if MAP gas, yeah, if you've got MAP gas, you can actually do bronze brazing. This actually gives more heat out in volume than the standard MAP torch, but it runs slightly cooler than MAP gas. But overall, it comes out ahead because, yeah, you've got more heat. It's a good concentrated flame. This is quite an expensive gun to buy, and these days, if you're thinking about going Bullfinch, you should also think LPG oxy, because you can now get an oxy LPG set, a good one, for about a bit more than half the price of the Bullfinch. Okay, you'll have to buy oxy bottles, cylinders, and refill them, but you get a lot more heat, and it's much more powerful. And these days, now that you can buy bottles rather than rent the oxygen bottles, you know, it saves you a couple of $100 a year on rental fees. So even though you're using 4 oxygen to 1 LPG, it soon adds up. The heat capability is a lot greater than this. But for today's exercise, this is plenty hot enough to do the job, and you could actually do this job with MAP gas. So to do the brazing itself, we're going to need, first off, some flux, some brazing flux, proper brazing flux. This is borax based, but it's not regular brazing flux. So, you know, the number of times I get people contact me and say, "Oh, Rob, I can't, you know, get the brazing to work. It's just beating up and running all over, but it won't cling." That's because the flux is wrong in 99% of the cases. And even though this is your regular pink flux, it's a dipping flux. It is not a wet paste type flux. That is used for production only. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you use that for doing brazing in furnaces, and for freehand you always use dipping. Now I also don't like pre-coated rods because you've got no control over how much flux you put on. You always pre-flux before you add the bronze, so you do your preheat, get up to temperature, add some flux, then give it more heat. The flux is doing its work while you bring it up to final temperature, and then you add the bronze, just the amount of bronze you want. Pre-coated rods, you've got no control at all. They're a dog's breakfast, I hate them. So yeah, always use separate flux and bronze. Now the type of rod you use, the quality of the rod will have a big effect on your brazing. These are BOC, top brand, smooth arc, manganese bronze. If it doesn't say manganese bronze, well, they could be anything. They could be really hard, super hard alloy, a mix, you know. And I've bought cheap rods when I've been hard up in the past, and they don't flow or melt anywhere near as nicely as these. These are 2.4 mil. I wouldn't go bigger than that. You can go smaller for fine work. It will help for sure. And yeah, you're good to go. Now previously I did show you the LPG torch, and I mentioned that that's all you need and that will do the job. Now if you do go oxy LPG, you've got the advantage of more heat, which will speed things up, but you have to wear eye filters with those because of the glare. When you use LPG or propane, you don't need to use eye filters. You can see exactly what's going on. It's good. But anything with oxygen in it, you're going to have that white glare that will screw your eyes up unless you have some sort of filtration. And the filter lens on that would be way less than a stick welder. You know, that would be a number 11 for a stick. If you go oxy LPG, you'd be down around number 4. And yeah, something to consider as far as usability. You know, I like using LPG because I mainly do small jobs, and also it makes it easier to see. You don't have to wear a filter. Okay, now what else we need? Well, we need one other thing. We need a bit of old rod. You think, what the hell are you going to do with that bit of old rod, Rob? We're going to use this to insulate the job. So when you heat this up, you want to have no heat loss. You want to support it. So I'll stick this in the vise, and I'll stick that up in the middle of there, and then we can just heat it and move it around. I can move it into there or whatever. So yeah, it's just a way of mounting the work so you can work on it. Don't lose any more heat than you have to. Yeah, you could put it on house brick or do whatever you like, but as long as you've got some thermal insulation, or you cut down your thermal loss, somehow you'll be a lot better off. Things will go a lot more quickly. Okay, let's go on and get on with the job. see how I work that with a bit of wire. Always have a bit of wire too, so you can move around the bronze and also move around your job. So that should do it. That should be enough. That looks pretty good. That'll definitely never come apart. So now we'll just let it cool down. We won't quench it because we don't want this to go brittle, and being on the engine to be vibration and everything, so we'll let it cool down naturally. Normally I would quench it and that'll help lift off some of the scale, but we'll just use a wire brush to clean it up and that'll be good enough. It'll come up pretty right. One other tip for beginners is never ever burn up the end of the bronze rod that's got the paint on it. One end will be colour coded. Always use the other end, because once that paint's gone, you've got no way of knowing what that rod really is, and you know, yeah, it's a smart move to leave that end alone, because later on you're going to be wanting to sift through your rods, and if there's no paint on them, you haven't got a clue what they are. Well, job done, all finished, turned out okay. It'll certainly not fall apart and it won't leak. And it'll be good and strong. So yeah, it's amazing what you can do with a bit of MAP gas, or you know, if you've got a heat source, yeah, have a go at brazing. It's great for lightweight jobs like this, model making, anything that's fine, small, that you can't, you know, otherwise weld, because it will just get eaten away, and even oxy will melt away stuff if you're not really careful. So you know, it's a bit savage. So yeah, MAP gas, bullfinch torch is great if expensive, and as I said, oxy LPG, next step up. But once again, you can also melt away your steel with oxy. Anything with oxy in it, it's got a lot of heat. You've got to be really careful, but you can't do that with LPG or MAP gas. You're going to heat this until the cows came home, and it would never ever melt. It would just go bright red. Okay, that's it from me. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Cheers.